Podcast, and I am so excited today to introduce Susan Baracco, a story architect for women. I love that about you. Welcome, Susan, to the podcast.
Thanks. I'm really excited to be here and chat with you today.
Yeah, before we came on the show today, I told you I wanted to talk. This is a casual coffee mug, relaxing type of thing, but we're going to talk. We're going to kind of dive deep into the ghostwriting world. So tell me about how you got started in ghostwriting and how did it come about in your life? Can you talk about that?
Gosh. Well, I've been a writer pretty much my whole life. I was, as a kid, I spent a lot of time journaling, writing stories, things like that, and ended up in college as an English major, graduated with that. And writing is one of those things I like to say it's been chasing me my whole life and it finally caught up. I've done a lot of different things in my career. Been in sales. I was actually a business coach for several years, and been avoiding writing almost. And then probably about 15 years ago, I got into copywriting. And so I was doing a lot of copywriting for agencies. I was partnering with a couple of marketing agencies, and I was their quote unquote in-house writer. So I would do website blogs. If they were redoing a website, I would redo the website copy as well as blogs, so I was doing ghostwriting in a slightly different way, short form.
Right.
And so did that for several years and really started getting more and more into, I was finding thought leadership, the term thought leadership was on the rise.
Yeah.
About that time, and I started kind of to pivot a little bit and work more one-on-one with executives, people that knew they wanted to get their ideas out there in short form on blogs and so forth,
Right.
and social media, and did that for a while. And then I took a ghostwriting course, and it was offered by a gentleman who was a ghostwriter. He was specializing in business books, and I took it. I thought, I want to know more about how that works. And he and I became friends, good friends, colleagues after that. And he emailed me a few months after the course and he said, "Hey, I have a client. She is one of my best clients. I'm done with her business book. She wants to write some kind of a personal thing, and I don't do that. So do you want to help her?" I said, "I would love to talk with her." And she became my first client. And the rest is they say is history. I started working with this woman and just fell in love with the process and had so much fun and said, "Yeah, I think this is what I want to be doing." So I've been doing that for 6 years, I think now.
You've been doing for 6 years now? That's great. Yeah, good
Yep.
for you. That was one of my questions I wanted to ask. Like, how did you find that first process for working with your first client? How did you find it? Was it challenging?
Oh, gosh, I remember going out to celebrate with my husband. I was like, "I have my first ghostwriting client. I'm so excited," and I am scared to death. I was like, "I don't know what I'm doing. Oh my gosh, what was I thinking?" Right? And but what I found is that with my coaching background actually served me very well because I was good at listening and I was good at questioning. And those are two really important things in the ghostwriting process. So I just dove in and thought, what do I need to know first? And kind of did it methodically in that sense, is what do I need to know before I can start writing? And so I really just dove in and started meeting like this and recording, and then using that to have it transcribed, and then working with that information.
Absolutely.
And
I love that. Your stories are very kind of sympathetic. And I'll explain with me, I've always been a writer, but I never really pursued it professionally over the years. But it wasn't until I lost my left leg in 2017 where I wrote I journaled to get through the grief and the depression of my limb loss.
Sure.
And that turned into my first book. And I published that book, and I didn't know what I was doing. I admit it. I was like totally green, and I made a lot of mistakes, but those mistakes taught me a lot of things. It taught me what not to do. But after that book was published, it started to sell a little bit. I got some traction, and then a friend of mine approached me just out of the blue and said, "Hey, would you be interested in ghostwriting a book for me?" And I knew what ghostwriting was,
Yeah.
But I'd never done it. So, but I was like, the deal was just too tempting. So, that's what I
Yes.
did. We ended up writing a book. I wrote a book proposal, and we sold that book to HarperCollins Leadership right out of the gate. So I
Wow.
went from nowhere, nobody writer to catapulted
Jeez.
into with the big five, and I
Wow.
had a lot of eyeballs on that work, and I was scared out of my mind.
I understand.
I was, I didn't just like you. I worked for some copywriting agencies and just
Yeah.
did a lot of websites and blogs and social posts.
Yeah.
And there's nothing wrong with that. And anyone listening here, please know what I'm getting ready to say, that I'm not negating anything about. There's people that love to do that, but it just, for
Yes.
me, it wasn't exciting. It kind of got humdrum,
Yeah, it did. For me
and
too.
yeah, it did.
Me too.
And I mean, there's something about it. I mean, it's great, but it has its place. But I wrote what really gave me the ghostwriting bug was I wrote an article. They told me, said, we want you to write an article in the voice of a 16-year-old girl who's living abroad. And I said, okay. So I wrote
Okay.
this article, and they loved it. And I'm like, that's so, so that was a ghostwritten work, and I'm like, okay, that's what happened. So, but yeah, so we're very, and you and I have got similar stories, and I love that, that you, where you've come and where you are now. So being I'm going to make sure I got this right, the story architect for women, I want to talk about that.
Okay.
What do you like and love most about your niche in that ghostwriting arena? What do you love about it?
It's a fun little story I will share with you. I was working with a gentleman who was a coach, and I was talking to him about, this business that I've transitioned, I've pivoted my writing, and I want to get into this. And he looked at my background and he said, why don't you just work with women? And I remember sitting there and saying, and eliminate half the world's population? Like, are you crazy? Why would anyone do that?
Right.
And the more I thought about it, I have background working with women, coaching women. I've been in a couple of different women's organizations, things like that. And I thought, I kind of gravitate towards that. That makes sense. And when I started, that was another one of those hold your breath moments. Like, I
Oh
really,
yeah,
that's wise or not. And it turns out, over time, that is very wise. I really enjoy working with women. I find that we very quickly connect, even over video calls. We just connect, and I can empathize and understand what they've been through. Oftentimes we share experiences as females, and I think that's super helpful. And one of the other little switches I've made recently, just in the last 2 years or so, maybe more than that, is I love working with people who have diverse backgrounds. So I've worked with, I just finished a book for an immigrant, a woman who came to this country from China. Great experience for me. She really needed help with her book, and she has an amazing story, and it's out on pre-sale right now. Just came out, just got released. So I'm really excited for her and for that book. So I'm finding a sense of enjoyment and appreciation working with people who come from diverse and sometimes very challenging backgrounds.
Yeah. Well, I love that you have niched down, and I love that you took the bravery of doing that. When I first got started, I think we all do. I think at some point probably start out as generalists, trying to hit the whole market.
Because you don't know
And
what you don't know.
yeah, I did the same thing, just thinking I want to be involved in everything, and that's great. But I've talked about it in the Association of Ghostwriters, our office hours. I've talked about that. Like, people, I find in generalists, it's more difficult to market yourself. I believe, I've seen, and that's why I have niched down, and working, not male or female. I've niched down into, what I find for me as a business book writer, ghostwriter, is that every business entity, every business person, CEO, entrepreneur, C-suite, you name it, they all have a jagged edge story. And what I mean by that is they didn't reach success through a straight linear line.
No.
They went through challenges. They went through these travesties, and they've overcame things. That's where the story lies. And
Yes.
so I have niched down into what I call hybrid business leadership memoirs, because a business book always has
A
that
personal
story.
story.
Always has it. It can't be. You cannot write a business book, I don't believe, without having that personal story in there. So I really have found my niche there, and I work with some, very influential leaders around the world, and so my kudos to you on niching down. I truly believe in that. And any ghostwriter out there that's listening to this podcast, I'm encouraging you, really soul search, right? Soul search and find that niche. Because like we talked about before we come on the podcast, for me, I can honestly say 75% of the work I've done has been for women leaders, women influential leaders, speakers, coaches. And I always find the process easier. Nothing against men. I mean, I'm not saying that at all. But most women are very directional. They know what they want when they come with a book. And so when they approach me with a book idea, it's pretty much nailed down. They're just ready to go. And I really respect that. Is that what you experience as well?
Yeah, definitely. It really depends on the person and what they are looking to do. Sometimes there's a little, I guess, focus that we have to gain in terms of, do you want this to be a memoir? Do you want it to have a business angle to it? Because I'm seeing a lot more of that too, like what you are is this more of a hybrid. It used to be memoir or thought leadership or business, and the categories in the book industry still are very much that way. But what's happening is a lot of that is starting to blend, and beautifully, I think it's because there's always a personal story. So, and I agree. And it's so, and the other thing too, just to back up to what you said about any ghostwriters who are listening to the podcast, is to think about your niche and to really kind of drill down and focus on that. Follow your heart, I would say, is like, what are you loving to write about? Because there's nothing worse. I've been a writer. I've kind of did my time as you did. And, I used to write for a moving company, and I used to write blogs for, a fruit, this vendor, this guy who was actually wholesaler, produce wholesaler. And I was writing weekly blogs. I paid my dues. Not that those aren't great businesses, but they're really not all that fun to write about. It was a real challenge, real
Absolutely. When I was in copywriting, I was writing for roofers and dentists. And again, nothing wrong with these professions.
Great businesses.
But when you
so
start
hard to
putting it
write
on the
for.
page, it just wasn't fulfilling for me, So
No, same here. Same
so
here.
we
So
paid our
if
dues.
you're in ghostwriting, I think that there's a certain passion that you have for doing this, that's unique to versus the shorter form blog type of writing. This is such a longer process, and it's such an intimate one. It really you get to know somebody pretty well.
Absolutely. I think every author that I've worked for, and I've written 36 books to date, every one of them, we still contact each other. These collaborations we become friends,
Yeah,
and
absolutely.
we're
Same
sharing
here.
all this. The one thing about about ghostwriting is in what we do, and again, this is geared toward ghostwriters, and any author listening to this podcast is thinking about hiring a ghostwriter, is there's, just like you said, there's a trust factor involved, and there's also a skill set involved with what we do. It's a special skill, I believe. Ghostwriting is just not, hey, let me listen to you and just put it on the page. There's a lot more involved, and as every book that I write, I find that I learn more and more. Is that how you feel when you?
Absolutely. Absolutely. It's that one notch up of, next time I'm just going to remember to go a little deeper on that. Or, geez, because a lot of times people, and I'm sure you find this too, where people come in and they don't tell you a story because they don't think it's important. And then you find out, maybe you're weeks later, you're still in the process of gathering information, and they finally come tell you this story, and it's like, that's pivotal. That's such an important story. Why didn't you tell me that?
Absolutely. I could have used that about 3 chapters ago.
Yeah, exactly. I could have based the whole book on that experience if it's a pivotal experience. And I think as human beings, we tend to do that. It's like, oh, that was no big deal. Like,
Absolutely.
yes, it was.
That was one of my next questions is, I mean, I believe, and you said it just a few minutes ago, you said the word listening with compassion. That's probably my biggest thing that I talk about, and you see my posts on LinkedIn and everything, like I talk about listening. I think as part of the interview process, I believe listening is probably the most important part. Is that how you feel? What is your important parts of your interview process?
Listening first, but then questioning. I think the two, for me, they go hand in hand, because if I hear something, again, somebody will make a comment about it and I'll be like, wait, tell me more about that. And almost a journalistic approach. So how did you end up handling that? How did you feel how did that make you feel? You know, what were you thinking? Were you scared at that moment in time? Or were you excited? You know, I'm looking to see if I can pull some emotion out of a situation. And the more that I can do that, the better that material becomes. And it's such an important part of what goes into the book. All
Absolutely.
of it.
I love that. And there was, I can't remember the ghost writer who put this out on LinkedIn. Someone might have been Salia Emerson. I don't know if you know Salia Emerson.
I do. Yeah.
She's great, fantastic ghostwriter. But I think she put out, somebody had taught her about interviewing and asked 2 words, the question, what else?
Yeah.
What else?
Mm-hmm.
Tell me what else about that. And that, you know, and anyone listening to this podcast, if you're an author listening to this podcast, let me talk about that here. As ghostwriters, we know the questions to ask, and just like Susan said, or like you said, that, you know, it's about knowing what to ask, when to ask it, and what you're looking for. And I love that, because that's where you pull out those hidden gems, those little nuggets that, like we're talking about, you may need in the beginning to make that such an impactful thing in the book.
Yeah.
So that's where part of our skill set as ghostwriters that we learn to do. The interviewing is very important. It's not just, you know, sitting in front of a camera and talking. It's very intricate, a lot of detail.
Sure is. And you get better at that. I don't know about you, but I've gotten better and better. And part of it is with every book I write, with every client that I talk to, is that I get more comfortable with asking the uncomfortable.
I am absolutely love. I might even title this podcast that. That's beautiful. It's so true. I mean, you know, and that's the hard part. You know, it is hard when you're a new ghost, if, you know, that you're afraid to ask those questions. But I find that I can't wait to get to the nitty gritty, because I know that's where the real authentic stuff happens. And I'm not afraid of doing that anymore. And I love that you brought that up, that's part of the interviewing process, is getting to it, getting down and unearthing that stuff that needs to be unearthed for the book. Back to ghostwriting. What, in your mind, what are the disadvantages that you may be experiencing in today's economic and society with your ghostwriting? Is there anything that you find that's has a disadvantage to you in your business? What do you think?
This has been a unique year, 2024. And it's funny, because I think some of our colleagues have been doing very well in 2024 and have not seen a slowdown in their business, and then some of us have. So it's been a little bit challenging. I think that for me, in regards to finding an author, one of the disadvantages is if you don't do a good job of explaining the process, what to expect, getting partway into a project with someone and then discovering that you're not a fit. And I've had that happen before.
Yes.
I can get messy and difficult to navigate. And so doing the best that we can up front to make sure that not only do I tell my clients when I'm talking to somebody who is thinking about writing a book, if I don't see what you see, then I'm not the right ghostwriter. So if I can't see you, if explained your vision, you've explained your goals, you've explained your concept for your book, and I'm not getting it, I'm not seeing it, then I'm not the right resource for you. So, you know, for me, it's if I get it, and typically and if I do, especially if I get it right away, and oh my gosh, and we're talking, and, you know, I've just met you, we're on a video call, and by the end of the call, we're just completely connecting, then that's a good match for me.
That's exactly right. I love that, because for me, it's all about that personality match and me working with the client.
So
It has to be. I've learned hard lessons there too, you know, but I have learned and adapted myself to where I can see red flags pretty much quickly.
me too.
Uh,
I
for
love that.
example, you know, probably last year I met with an author, and he had, you know, come out and said, "Hey, I'll pay you a hefty sum. I want you. Like, you're my guy. I want you to write." But after 5 minutes of meeting the guy on Zoom, I knew it wasn't. There's no way.
Not gonna
I
work.
turned it down, and my wife was like, "Are you crazy?" I'm like,
No,
couldn't work with the guy.
quite the contrary. Yeah.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
couldn't do it because you know, in our seats and what we do, I mean, it has to have a personality match. You have to feel comfortable with them. They have to feel comfortable with you. And
100%.
that's one thing about this whole business we're in. That's where a lot of people miss the mark. You know, hey, I'm looking for a ghostwriter. It might be a cheap ghostwriter. I don't care what, you know, you need to care. You need to care about your ghostwriter. You need to care about their experience. You need to care about the value they're bringing,
Right.
because it's your book. It's your life, and that you're bringing to the page. It's very important. Don't discount. Don't look for discounts, and make sure you get along with the ghostwriter. You know,
Yeah.
and I make sure I get along with my authors now, and so that's why I set up a, you know, I give a 30-minute discovery call, because that's all I need. That's all I need to know.
Same here.
Work with it.
I've gotten much better at it. I've gotten
Yeah.
much better at it. And having the you know, the insight to pay attention to your intuition when you're talking with someone like that. I've had that experience too, where I'm like, ooh, the more we talk, I know I'm not the right person. But
Yeah, it is a situation. I've been in that. And it feels weird and
it
icky kind
does.
of thing, you know.
It
And
does.
I actually, there was one gentleman. I actually was under contract with him, and he, at first, you know, he was very bombastic, and he was like, "I want this and I want that in the book, and I want you to cuss, and I want, this is me." And yeah, okay, that's his book, right? But the more that we worked together, it just wasn't jiving, you know.
It doesn't work.
We
Yeah.
parted amicably. He's like, "Look, I don't even have a book. I don't even know what I'm doing." I was like, "Cool." So, you know, so, about your ghostwriting, is what do you, what are your, is there constant challenges that you experience in your business? Like, is it marketing? Is it branding? What are your challenges? What do you think?
I think that I think that there's a lot of competition, and I hesitate to use the word competition because here you and I are on the phone together and having a lovely
Right.
conversation, and I think there's plenty of work out there. I think you know, that's part of I like being in the organization. The Association of Ghostwriters is great because we share a lot of important information, and we support each other, and I think that's a terrific
The wonderful
platform.
organization. Marsha
Yeah.
Layton Turner is fantastic.
Yeah, she does a great job running that, and there's a lot of value in there. So that's and it's set up so that we're here to support each other, and that's really great. And I find I get nothing but support, so that's important.
Yeah.
But I think the marketing piece is probably one of the biggest challenges because how much is enough? Like, am I posting enough? Are my posts interesting enough? Even if I don't get a lot of likes or things like that, is it, you know, are the things that I'm putting out there really resonating with my audience? Knowing that for sure, making sure that I'm reaching the right audience. I mean, are the right people even seeing this? I
Right.
think marketing is probably one of the bigger challenges overall. And only because is changing constantly with all the technology and with the different platforms and even new social media platforms. I'm like, stop, I don't want to be on everything. You know, I don't want
I
to be
know.
on 17 different platforms.
Yeah.
I focus personally. I have a friend who says we have monogamous relationships with LinkedIn. And so that's a good way to put it because, you know, I want to be really good at LinkedIn and getting my message out on that platform. And so what are the different ways that I need to do that? So
Right.
I think the marketing piece is I'm always learning. I find, okay, so I have to now try this, and now I have to try that. And now I'm, you know, it's a real, that's probably the biggest challenge, is to keep up with that and write. So writing posts and writing different content, as well as taking good care of your clients. I
I
think,
agree with you 100%. And, you know, I'm a firm believer in you. You probably see me. I'm religious about my, you know, content creation, because I believe in and I've talked about this with the Association of Ghostwriters, and anyone listening here is a new ghostwriter, or even if you're here listening, I believe, and we talked about earlier about showing value, the value that we bring as our skill set, our listening, interviewing processes. I'm a firm believer that any client needs to see the value before they talk to us, before
Absolutely.
they get on a phone call.
That's very true. Yeah.
Right. So
Yeah.
I'm a big advocate on content creation, staying, being purposeful with it, and using LinkedIn, and also I now have a new Substack, and I don't know if you, but Substack is very, very helpful.
Really?
Yes, it's a great platform for writers. Something, if you haven't done it, I would check it out. It's great because you can post on there, and it's really geared down toward writers and people finding writers. So you can create articles in there, that kind of thing. You can on LinkedIn as well, but it's, to me, it's a more focused. Substack is definitely a more focused toward writers, and as for people that are finding them and finding that kind of thing. LinkedIn, yeah, it's a love-hate relationship. I love the platform, but I'm constantly learning on how to use it, and that takes time, and that takes away from some of the work that but I don't let it. They could take time away from the work. So that's a trick, and I agree with you 100%. Marketing and branding is probably the hardest part of a ghostwriter's business.
Absolutely.
Because, and you're right, we're not in competition. There's millions of people that want to write books, and every one of us, there's enough room for every one of us. I think that's why everyone in the Association of Ghostwriters are so helpful to each other, because we know that we're in it together. We're not fighting for the same job. It's not like a real estate office where you're banging out trying to get the same listing, and
Exactly. Yeah.
So I think there's that camaraderie that I love with all my ghosts, my colleagues, with you. I mean, all these. I try to nurture those relationships, and that's why I invited you onto the podcast today, and other ghosts, and I'm looking forward to having everyone on the show. So let me get off my soapbox here. Let me ask you one great question.
Okay.
What do you enjoy the most about ghostwriting? What do you love the most about it? What do you get out of it?
Oh my. I think the number one thing for me is hearing people's stories. There have been times when I listen to someone's story and I just think, how on earth did you survive? Like, how did you get through that? Like,
that's what I love too. I love that front row seat.
Oh my gosh. And it's fascinating. And then my mind just immediately kicks in. It's like, oh, okay, so how am I going to use this? Like, this is going to be great for the book. And I get really, the energy for me is just, it's addicting.
It is addicting. I love that.
It's addicting. I love hearing people's stories because they're so fascinating. And the more different from mine, the more it blows my mind. Like, wow, I can't believe that, that you survived that kind of situation, or that you were able to bounce back, or whatever the case. And to me, it's then, like I said, figuring out, then coming up with the ideas about, how are we going to use this? This is going to be great. Is this going to be a key to, a key part of the content? Are we going to kind of, I just love coming up with, with creating and innovating.
Yes, that's what I love too. How are you going to fit that into the concept of the book, the theme of the book? Or if you find something that's so pivotal, we got to figure out how to get this in the book. How are we going to do that? I love that creative side too, and that's what I love the most. Hearing the stories, being front row, hearing them before anyone else, and having the privilege of that. So any author out there that's listening to this podcast, please know that every ghostwriter probably will mirror our sentiments today. We love hearing your stories. We love hearing the things that no one else has heard, and we're ready to bring those to the page so it's engaging and make the reader just want to keep turning the page. We're ready to do that for you.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
It's been great having you, Susan. I want to ask you, so how can people find you? How can someone get in touch with you?
LinkedIn is a great place because I'm there often, but my website is exactly, as you mentioned, it's storyarchitectforwomen.com, all one word. And it is, that's a great place. I have a masterclass that I'm offering right now. It's coming up in September for anyone who's thinking about writing a book to learn more about the whole process from start to finish. So I
Great.
walk people through from start to finish, from first words on the page to the actual book in your hand. What are you going to experience? What to watch out for, what to expect.
Right. That is great. Well, I hope anyone listening here, please reach out to Susan if you're interested in writing a book. It's been great having you on the show today, and I am so glad to meet you.
Thank you.
And I will look forward to seeing you again soon. Thanks so much.
Thanks, Jeff.